wisdom, folks, please follow the house rules. Don't be a wallflower, get involved in the chat, and enjoy this episode of Wealth, Wine and Wisdom.
Well, mates, Sammy Saggers, welcome to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Mates, good to have you here. I'll introduce you to the crowd as we get things moving. But before we do, mate, maybe we'll just tune in with the crowd and figure out where everyone's coming in from. So, team, if you're engaging with us tonight, whack it in the chat. Where are you coming in from? Say good day to our wonderful guest, Sammy. As we get ready to decant the week. For those of you who are joining potentially for the first time, welcome. It's good to have you here. And if you've just stumbled by us by chance, just take a few minutes just to let you know where you've landed. Because Wealth, Wine and Wisdom is something we've been doing for a little while around here. We took a little bit of a break. It started in COVID when fear went viral. And there was huge amounts of panic around the world. And Jace and myself decided to go live every week with a glass of wine. We call it Decant the Week. And bring a little bit of the facts, not the fear, not the bullshit clickbait journalism that we hear these days, but we decided to bring some fact to you guys and maybe cut through some of that noise and give you the unreliable or the reliable truth. And the results are extraordinary. Ultimately, through COVID, we helped save hundreds of businesses from going bankrupt. We made thousands of people make the right decisions when everyone was scared through paralysis of what was going on in the headlines. We were bringing the truth. And Sammy was one of the people who was fundamental in the analysis behind some of the wild accusations that I thought that Jason was saying back when the COVID first started. He's like, buy property, Fenton, buy property. We're in the worst housing crisis we've ever seen in Australia. Well before anybody was even talking about there being a housing crisis, Jace was on the money, and we're lucky enough to have Sam, one of the gurus of positive real estate, join us tonight. Maybe unleash some wisdom, definitely drink some wine, and hopefully have a good time with all of you. So, welcome to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom, team. Hopefully, we'll entertain you, provide you with some facts, not fiction, and help you guide your way to your wealth journey over the coming months and years. So we've got a few people already joining us, Sammy. We've got a day in the life of Lisa and Tony in Melbourne. Welcome, team. Good to see you guys here. Courtney, you've already got some fans.
Courtney's, she's, we love each other. So I can see why I'm getting a happy review from Courtney. But, I tell you, Andy, I'm happy to be here, mate. Happy to be here, folks. I've always wanted to get on the show. I always feel like I'm left out on a Friday afternoon just when you want to crack open a red wine and talk about the world. So glad to be filling in for Jason. He's off climbing rocks. He loves his wife and he loves rocks. So that's his world. So hopefully we'll get him back next week. So you've got your regular host there, Andy, your regular co-host, because not sure if I'll cut the mustard, but we'll soon find out. We never know until we get to the end of the show whether it was a train wreck or was full of wisdom. So hopefully it's not wealth, the train wreck, and wine. It's wealth, wisdom, and wine. But cheers to you, mate. Thanks for having me on the show. And I know you've just opened a pretty good bottle of wine. I've probably done the opposite.
Well, mate, I have. And I'm going to give a bit of a shout out, Sammy, while we do this, because you talk about property. You've always talked about location. These boys from Barmer Park are absolutely producing some incredible Shiraz and incredible Pinot Noir at the moment. Mate, this is a cracker. I'll bring a bottle up when we have our meeting. Our leadership meeting next week. I'll bring a couple of bottles up so that we can enjoy some of the goodness from the Mornington Peninsula.
I'd love to taste it. Sounds wonderful.
So, mate, welcome to the show. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, because I've I've always been a follower of the podcast and listener of all of the gold that comes out of your mouth, mate. So it won't be a train wreck. I'm sure it'll be very informative and very amusing, mate. Because whether you like to admit it or not, you're quite the comedian. For those of you who don't know, Sam won my heart when he gave a presentation called "The Era of Shit Houses and Shit Places," and it just happened to be. I was in Kalgoorlie with Jason Witten, and Sammy and Jason have been working together for years. They were sort of the gurus that took the property world by storm almost in the early days of when realestate.com took off. And while I was over in Kalgoorlie, we were visiting some clients of ours, and Jason's gone, "Can you just do a right-hand turn down here? Is there a street called, I don't know.
Dugan Street.
Dugan Street."
Yeah.
And we've driven past his place, and he's gone, "Stop the car. Stop the car." He's gone, "This is it. This is it." And he's jumped out. He's jumped on FaceTime with Sam, and he's gone, "Mate, I finally got here. This is that block of units that we developed 15 years ago in Kalgoorlie. Never saw the place. Never went there.
Yeah.
Did a development, and mate, things
Well, they were the days. We actually put $1,000 down on that deal and entered into a contract, and it was like doing a big house and land package, but there was just 12 apartments, and it turned out to be a really good development. But certainly back in the days where we were probably a bit more enthusiastic than wise, so we were doing some radical stuff. But I think we finally worked out this little asset class called real estate. Takes a bit of time to understand it, but certainly doing some good work these days, which I'm pretty proud of.
Well, mate, there's a clairvoyance in the audience by the Witten by name and nature, who says there might be some drinking on both sides of the equation tonight. So I can guarantee you we won't let you down, Shay. We'll definitely do a bit of that. Sammy, I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about a few things that have been going on in the news. But maybe before we do, there's this funny thing that we do, which is called Decant the Week. Where we look back on what have been the interesting headlines, perhaps the clickbait journalism, perhaps the headlines that shouldn't be headlines, and we have a little bit of fun at other people's expense and sometimes at our own. But we'll jump into Decant the Week, and then I'll jump over to you, Sammy, and see what's been going on in your headlines. So,
sorry, just
Decant the Week. So Sammy, well,
the old Raffy just came in the room and we just ran him over. Sorry, mate. We've got to do.
I thought that you'd hit your knee there, Sam, but the dog's attacked you.
Dog's under the desk, and I've run him over with the chair. Anyway, sorry about that.
That's all right, mate. Well, it's quite suiting though. But speaking of dogs under the desk, I've got a little bit of a headline. So you'll be interested in this, Sammy. You'll like this. So, team, you might remember if you were watching last week that I alluded to chatting about a whistleblower. We saw this in the Fin Review, got me very, very interested. So the former debt collection officer, Richard Boyle, has been spared jail. He's been spared jail, Sammy. Thank goodness for that. 7 years after the whistleblower exposed unethical debt collection practices within the Australian Tax Office. So I was like, well, hang on. Was who's the unethical party in this? I'm like, it sounded like he worked for the ATO. So I did a little bit of digging, Sam. So I found this out, and I'll read parts of it so that I don't get things wrong. But in short, ATO whistleblower Richard Doyle, while working in the ATO in Adelaide's debt collection unit in 2017, before COVID, he says staff were told standard garnishee notices on virtually every case, even non-trading bank accounts, without properly considering the taxpayer's circumstances, without even considering the circumstances. And he detailed a 27-page initial public disclosure document actually detailing all of this. So, team, for those of you who don't fully understand what a garnishee notice is, effectively a garnishee notice is where the ATO go, you owe us money, So we're going to reach into your bank account and we're going to issue a garnishee notice and we're going to take that money. We're going to issue a notice. We're going to take that money. So Richard was inside the ATO and actually had these orders. And he was saying, look, I don't think this is ethical. I don't think this is ethical to do a blanket notice and take people's money out of even non-trading bank accounts without properly investigating it. That was his claim. So, Sammy, what do you think they did? The whistleblower, which, by the way, the government promote, and they tell a lot of people to do this. They say, hey, let's blow the whistle on these corrupt people. Let's make sure that people who are not doing the right thing pay their dues, and let's make sure that we blow the whistle. Well, he used the whistleblower legislation or process in order to blow the whistle on the ATO. After initial avenues, he went public via the ABC Four Corners program in April in 2018, alleging heavy-handed garnishee notices of the tax ombudsman. And he launched a formal review into the ATO for the use of their garnishee notices. So what transpired, team, as a result of that? Well, I'll let you know. He spent the last 4 or 5 years in court. They've tried to sue him. They've gone under. Oh, what was the? I don't want to get this wrong, Sammy. There's the balloon. So they must have won the court case. They ended up pursuing him under wrongful disclosure or
they found. They just wanted to pin it on him. But he was, mate, unbelievable.
So ultimately, he's blowing the whistle on the people who say blow the whistle on people who aren't paying tax. He's blowing the whistle on the people who are collecting the tax and said that you're doing it in an irresponsible way and taking money from whose pocket, ladies and gentlemen? From your pocket. Number one headline that didn't hit the news this week. But anyway, let's get away from the politicians because we know that they're all reasonable parasites. Sammy, I thought, given that you're a property guy, maybe what we would do is have a little bit of a look at something that's happened in the world of the stock and tech world over the last week. And there's been interesting rumors. Apple have been rumored to be joining forces with Google. So two of the super giants of the industry, Sam, Apple and Google, two of the largest companies on the face of the planet, probably one of the larger joint ventures that we'll ever see, where Siri will become empowered by Google's AI. Which is Gemini. For those of you who don't know, most people know ChatGPT. The lesser known one is Gemini, which is Google's version of it. One of the most sophisticated video models because it's got all of YouTube to learn from. So as soon as these rumors came out earlier on in the week, what do you reckon would happen, ladies and gents? Whack it in the chat. What do you think would happen if Google and Apple, to the public, we're told that potentially we're going to do something great together? $2 trillion businesses. What do you think would happen when these two companies actually say, hey, listen, we're circling around. We might actually do a little bit of a deal together. What do you reckon happened, team? Whack it in the chat. What do you reckon happened, Sammy?
Mate, I tell you what, that would light a fuse, that's for sure.
Well, it set the cat amongst the pigeons because here's the thing. Apple have been hardware-based. So phones, computers, here we go, mix on it, stocks go up, share price booms. On Julie, yep, absolutely, Sarah. Share price is going up. Yep, Shay, bang on it. Ultimately, what ended up happening? Well, think about it. So Apple, for those of you who use, and hang on, I'm just gonna silence my phone while I say this. Those people who use Siri, and probably I've just set off phones all around the world. But for those of you who use Siri, you'll know that Siri hasn't really caught up with what's going on in the world yet. Siri's kind of like the unfortunate friend who's not been reading the newspapers of recent. And that's because ultimately Apple have been focusing on the hardware side of the equation, not the software side of the equation as aggressively as everybody else. And so what they've said is, well, let's empower Siri. My iPad just went off. Let's empower Apple's version of their voice technology with one of the most powerful AI agents on the face of the planet. So a major hardware company probably the largest hardware company with the largest tech company, or one of the largest software companies on the face of the planet. So check this out. This is the 5-day chart of what happened with Alphabet. So the Alphabet is Google, for those of you who don't know. Absolutely, Nigel, take over the world. For those of you who don't know, team, I've said this for a little while. I reckon that one of these companies will end up being the Fifth Element type of massive company that overthrows governments at some point in time. But Apple stock price, have a look at the point there. 2nd of September, between the 2nd of 3rd of September, massive jump. Have a look at what happened with Apple, almost identical period of time. The big jump in the market. And you might say, well, that's only an 8% return over 5 days. Well, that's not a bad return over a year, I'd say, ladies and gents, for most people. But then let's have a look at how this translates into a few of my favorite indexes. And I'll kind of get to my point when we get to the end. But ultimately, this is something we've been talking about in the world of, well, property's been going absolutely gangbusters, and people have been saying the share market's been a bit lackluster. But ultimately, the share market has been performing extraordinarily well in certain areas. So if we have a look at the NASDAQ 100, and so for those who are not familiar, the NASDAQ is an index over in the US, and ultimately it's the top 100 stocks, and it's mostly tech, right? That's what the NASDAQ is. So it's ex-financials, ex-industrial stocks, so it's mostly the tech companies. And if we have a look at what the index has actually done over that period of time, we've got 25% over the last 3 years, 20% per annum over the last 10 years on the NASDAQ 100, mostly the tech stocks of the world. And then we have a look at my favorite index, Sammy. We haven't spoken about this before, but my favorite index is the FANG index. It originally stood for Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. The index has done around about 25, almost 26% every year for the last 5 years, but it's made up of more. And nowadays, the FANG index, especially depending on who you get it through as well, there's a few different providers through ETFs and things like that you can get this through. But if we have a look at the stocks here, we go, well, it's tracking Alphabet, which is Google. It's tracking Apple, Broadcom, which is a major tech producer or a chip producer, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Meta, which is Facebook, of course. We've got Amazon, Netflix, ServiceNow, and CrowdStrike, some of the largest technology companies on the face of the planet. And ultimately, this index is tracking those major maneuvers in there, or those major movers in there. Total fund performance of 25% per annum every year for the last 5 years. And then there's this giant here. Now, hopefully you haven't seen this as I'm going through. And Sam, I know you already know who this is, but team, what other stock or what other index would you know that would have outperformed these indexes? Over the last 10 years, it's averaged 84% a year, every year for the last 10 years, 84%. And in the last 3 years alone, it's done 74.65% every year for the last 6 years. Does anybody, Courtney's like, yep, give me some of that, 100%. My question is, how many of you are actually invested in these types of things? And who's been telling you that these things actually exist? Because a lot of the things that I hear from people, Sam, is that the markets aren't going too well. But similar to property, although property seems to be going up in almost every aspect these days, but unlike property, perhaps, it's specific areas of the market that are going up absolutely disproportionately the others. So Courtney might be onto it. It's Sammy's portfolio that's done 10%, that's done 84% per annum every year for the last 10 years. Julie says it's gold. Alexa says it's the WOW or the Weapons of Wealth from the exit plan. You might be right there. It might actually be the Weapons of Wealth from the exit plan. But if you'd been listening to the show a little while ago, it's this funny little thing called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is now available and has been available for a little while through equity exchanges through this funny thing called ETFs, which are exchange traded funds, right? Or indexes. And you can actually buy these as a part of a stock portfolio. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up today, Sam, is because ultimately I knew you were coming onto the show, and I thought I better have some things with good returns on it because, mate, some of the stuff that you've been looking at over the last 3 or 4 years have been shooting the absolute lights out. So I thought I'd put my best foot forward and bring up some of the things we've been talking about. But in my world, before I throw over to you, Sam, to see what's in the news with you, what we've been saying is we'll follow the trends. And the FANG stocks now, in my opinion, is like the Coles, the Myer, the Woolworths. Like when we were young, those mega companies that when we were young, Sam, they were the big trends. And those companies have all reached significant maturity in the many of billions of dollars. And now there's a new game that's being played by these tech companies. And they're not talking in billions, they're talking in trillions. And in my world, you go, well, you can't not own these things because if you don't own them, then you're probably missing out on the biggest growth opportunity in the share market that anybody's seen ever, even since Steve Jobs graded this graced this planet.
Yeah, I love it.
Mate, that's a bit of what's going on in my world.
Maybe we need to change the word FANG to FRANG because then we can throw some real estate in there. But, mate, I tell you what, that is gold. Like, those returns are pretty special. And, geez, Bitcoin. It's never ceases to amaze me how it just keeps on rolling on. But for sure, mate, like I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to make a bit of a buck outside of what we do in business, and trying to sort of, I think, one of the hardest things of being in business is just how much you tend to put money back into the business, and they can be, let's face it, business can be absolute money pits, and sometimes we just forget to look after ourselves and work out ways to, get money into high-performing assets. And I think some of that performance, even when I judge it against some of the business ideas we've created inside our own business, you're like the return on investment of a shit idea versus the FANG is just chalk and cheese. So sometimes it just pays to belong to the right, follow the right sort of puzzle, doesn't it?
Well, they sort of say that that the past leaves some breadcrumbs and some clues of what the future is going to do, but you've got to be willing to change your perspective in order to be able to see it's not going to happen the same way that it did yesterday, but it's probably going to happen exactly the same way, but with a different mechanism. So, mate, that's when I talk about my best foot forward, you're here today. I don't have any better than that. That is literally the best that I've got. We've been talking about it for a little while, and you, me, and Jace, over bottles of wine when we've caught up, have been talking about these things. But I reckon in my world, these are things that everybody should be considering. And in the news, they're things that are often left out because they're good news stories.
Yeah, so true.
So, mate, what have you been seeing in the news? The good, the bad, the ugly, the entertaining? What's been going on?
Well, mate, I guess, it's been a big week, hasn't it? And nothing has shocked me more than seeing one of our old menaces himself, Danny Andrews, hanging out with the North Korean president, the president of Russia, and of course Xi Jinping himself. There is this has to be one of the craziest things I've ever seen when it comes to conspiracy around who was Dan Andrews, who was this guy, and I almost think, geez, is this something that even the ASIO world needs to investigate, that Australia has an ex-premier just going to the Communist Party's Chinese military parade and hanging out for a class photo. So
he does look very at home there, though, doesn't he?
oh my god,
It actually does look like these guys could have gone to preschool together. Do you know what I mean?
I'm in shock. And yeah, I don't know. Look, you're a Victorian. You lived through that era of challenge, and obviously, you know, there was some good things, but also some tough stuff. And he certainly left the state in a challenging place. And you know, when we look at the real estate market now, you know, we're sort of leaning back into Victoria, but it's gone through some tough times over the last sort of 5 years. And yeah, this guy, you know, I don't know. It's just a bit of a photo, that one, which I don't know.
Well, are we still the most underpriced or are we still the lowest value real estate in Australia on average, or is that?
Yeah, price wise, you guys kind of sort of missed out on, I guess, property booms happening elsewhere, and you know, they often say it's like, why does a market go wrong? How does a market not end up performing? And it's depopulation. You had depopulation occurring at that time. People were like, how do I get out of Melbourne? A dictator. Arguably, you had Dictator Dan, which everyone sort of talked about back in the day.
Surely that can't have been in any of your previous book philosophies, could it? That a dictator is one of the key reasons property goes down in the region.
Well, we certainly had one then. And then debt. He got Victoria into a lot of debt. And obviously, the crazy part is all of that stuff now is being paid through Victorian land tax, which is also one of the reasons that the market itself has, you know, not performed, because it's all going to be paid for. This stuff isn't free. This stuff is not free. And yeah, there he is. I think it's the photo of the year myself. I can't think of anything more incredible than seeing Danny Boy hanging out with Vladimir.
It's something, Sammy, we would have joked about in the middle of COVID. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure we did joke about this in the middle of COVID, but we would never have expected to see him standing front and center and Albanese just going, oh, well,
yeah,
he's a big boy.
Yeah. No, it's pretty sickening. It really is actually very sickening to see. But
is that John Cleese standing in the middle at the back?
Just doesn't look like John Cleese. Well, it's the who's who of rat bags. You've got all sorts of lunatics there. But wow. Anyway, that's what's made the news. And of course, speaking of politicians and crazy people like Dan Andrews, this one came out earlier in the week. Bigger parliament, longer terms in the PM sites. Now, I'm not too fussed about a longer term. I actually think that would make a little bit more sense, because I feel like I'm actually going to the voting poll way too often for a federal election. And I think, you know, going back to communist China, one of the advantages I think they do have is they long-term politics. They just are able to deliver on some big picture stuff without cutting each other off. And obviously here in Australia, I think we've had 8 prime ministers in 8 years or something it was at one point, which basically meant nothing's been done. And we can see that today in the housing crisis. There's no stock being built. There's lots of bureaucracy behind it, and it's just the chopping and changing of government. But I don't know if I'm a bigger fan of more politicians coming in to, represent us people. There's not much representation going on, and I'm not sure if it's just an idea of how to create more jobs for the boys, so to speak. And really, politics has become such a business in this country. It's a bit crazy, but I think they're looking to add a bucket load of electorates and maybe just sort of, I don't know, create a situation where, there's more representation out there, but I'm not sure that's such a good thing.
Well, in my world, Sammy, the way that in business that you make fast maneuvers and that you make quick decisions is you create a think tank. That's the
Yeah.
way that you make fast decisions. The fast decision is, let's make a group of people who can't decide things take a long time to decide things, so I don't have to decide things, so that perhaps maybe the decision never has to be made. So I agree. I think that more people in a place where they can't make decisions, and I think that maybe we should pay them a lot. I mean, if we expand the parliament, what's the more for their mates? Absolutely, Fletch, 100%. This isn't taking care of you and me. This is taking care of them and their mates, and ultimately, it's a well. Here's the thing: you've got some stats here, Sammy, but where do you think, as far as industries and revenues of industries, where do you think the government should sit? Right? Where do you actually think, as far as how much revenue they generate, where do you think that they should sit? We've got companies like Google and Amazon and Facebook who are sitting, in $1 trillion worth of revenue produced in order to fund that out into the community. Where should a regulator sit based on tax? Should they be in the top? What do you reckon? What's your thoughts? Whack it in the chat, because Sammy's got some brutal reality that we can look at here.
It's pretty mind-blowing that as a country, we've now got to a point where the government is the biggest industry. Like, this is sickening. It's actually quite frightening that we are now in a place where the public service is effectively the biggest industry. It's keeping the place afloat. Like, as a country, we need to take stock and some personal ownership around, like, are we producing the right companies here, the right productivity, the right businesses to deliver Australia's future? Because it just seems to me like, the same old players are up there. You've got, state government administration now in Australia is actually like the one of the biggest industries in Australia outside of finance. So it's crazy, crazy.
They're here to support the system, not rule it like an emperor. They're here to support it and make it grow. But the fact that we're actually seeing them there as the second biggest industry as far as revenue is concerned, and so the good part about that, Sam, would be if they were producing the same amount of profit based on the same amount of revenue that was coming in, profit as far as actual GDP difference, then you go, okay, that's fair enough. They're contributing to society, but ultimately, they're actually getting one of the largest clips out of any industry in Australia, getting more revenue than almost anyone else in Australia, and not delivering the basic fundamentals that we need, which is safety, housing,
Yeah.
affordability, social infrastructure, social safety, all the fundamentals that ultimately governments are there to exist.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're not here to make a profit, let's face it. So, but Alex, here's one I prepared earlier for you. Alex,
did you share your slides with Alexis? Because when I saw that there, I'm like, hang on.
Oh, sorry, it's Alexis.
Alexis.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about the announcement of the Indian Commerce Minister and the plan being proposed to address the housing crisis. Now, this is mind-blowing that Australia now has kind of lost that much control, that other countries are now going, well, I don't think Australia politicians can solve their own housing crisis. How about we turn this into a business and solve it for them? And of course, there's been ministers in the Indian government talking to wealth funds in Qatar about how to come to Australia and solve our crisis for us, because we can't seem to do it for ourselves, which is kind of crazy. We're at this sort of point where it's now becoming headline news around the world that actually there's money to be made in Australia if the housing crisis could be solved. And what that looks like is potentially bringing skill from outside of Australia, inside of Australia to fix Australia, because Australia has not created the right skill-based network to build Australia, which is kind of mind-blowing that maybe we've got it wrong. Maybe we haven't invested enough in growing our own tradespeople and bringing the right set of workers into the country to support the future of Australia. Australia's business plan is huge. Like, we're talking over the next 25 years, another 15 million people, according to the ABS, coming into Australia. Think about that, right? It's taken...
Not according to the government sent to this great nation of ours.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's taken 225 years to reach, what, 27 million people. And we're talking about reaching circa 40 million over the next circa 25 years. And this is what, like, if we were to look at the average build times to completion now, it's sort of starting to not look good, particularly for the density, which back in 2013, it took 1.7 years, basically 18 months, or 15 months to deliver an apartment project. That same apartment project today is closer to circa 2.8 months, so closer to 3 years.
That's a staggering statistic.
That's huge.
Staggering statistic.
That's huge.
Because if like, you would know this, Sam, like, and maybe I'll put you on the spot, but if you can give me a ballpark for your average kind of development, high-rise development in Brisbane or Melbourne, like, what would be the total cost of construction for something like that? You know, if it was done on or the yearly cost of construction on something like that?
To build a significant building, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, so tied up. And
so if you delay that, and it's meant to have been, say, $100 million over 1.5 years, and you expand that over to almost 3 years, then you're an extra $50 million effectively worth of cost of construction, just based on bureaucracy, red tape, and nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, for developers, financing is a thing, right? So they've got loans they sign up to, and obviously, if you can deliver a project in 1.7 months, 1 year and 7 months, you're able to offer the product to the market at a better rate. But if you're factoring in your FISO 2 years and 8 months, it's starting to not look feasible. And this is the problem. When the developers do their feasibilities, they're now going, this is not feasible. And of course, all of that is to do with the lack of the right level builders in the country, for particularly the high density space. You can see with the build time for a house, just a single project home, it's gone from 7 months to 1 year and 1 month. It doesn't sound big, but we are losing productivity. It's actually huge, And there's some stats around that Australian builders are the second best paid in the world, but the fourth least productive.
Fourth least
productive. But
who was the best and who was worse?
But the thing is, it's probably not a dig at the builders. It's just we do not have enough builders. And it's I think the highest paid is builders in like Switzerland or something. But we're got highly paid skill set, highly paid trades, but producing just not enough. And the production thing is really just not getting the jobs done fast enough, because there's not enough trades.
And is that? I mean, you speak to the people who are doing the jobs here. You've got your ear to the ground of what's going on. So are the developers saying that it's just finding the people, or is it other stuff as well? Is it contract management?
most of the time it's finding the right people. It's and as sort of Sonia's kind of alluded to here, we've kind of defunded the right skill set. We've defunded things like TAFE over the years. It's people are not leaving school going, I want to be a carpenter. And so we've ended up in a place where we just don't have the right amount of trades in Australia right now. And yeah, when you speak to the builders, it's like, well, where do I get the subbies from? Where do we bring in the tilers from? It's it's a real manual kind of context that.
And this is the Jekyll and Hyde of this sort of stuff, Sam, because you know, I'm an ex-resident of the UK and Europe and a few other countries in previous lives, and what I've seen at different points in time, and I'm going to use the UK as an example. Like in the UK, when I was over there in my 20s, there was a massive shortage of nurses and doctors and dentists and basically clinical professions, right? Massive shortage, huge. So they incentivized it in order to get people into the country in order to support those trades, which are fundamental, right? Like hygiene, health, so on and so forth. So then fast forward 15 years, maybe 20 years, and what had happened is they opened it up to Europe. There are a lot of very, very qualified people from Poland, from Eastern Bloc, from all around Europe, from Spain, from everywhere, that then came to support the UK community as far as doctors, dentists, all of those skilled migrants that they needed in the country. The interesting part, so we're saying, hey, or what I'm hearing is we really should be saying, hey, we need labourers and we need a lot of people to build stuff in this country to support the country the way that it stands. But what we saw more recently with Brexit is that 15, 20 years later, the very thing that they asked to bring in to save them was the very thing that everybody hated and ended up voting against with Brexit, which was there's too many people who aren't from here who are helping this country do what it needs to do. So it's a really interesting kind of Jekyll and Hyde side of the equation. But what you're saying here is that we need more builders, more plumbers, more people in construction in order to be able to sustain our ability to continue to move forward and produce more houses. But your average person out there is going, well, hang on, Sam, the government and the people are saying that migration is a bad thing because if we have migration, then that increases the need for housing. So
yeah, and it's an interesting one because Australia's gone down a skilled migration kind of route, and really education is a business here in Australia. So university degrees are one of the biggest industries in Australia. And so effectively our visa system works off university degrees, yet quite often construction is a TAFE diploma. And so we've kind of put our faith in a skilled migration around high level education, but we're forgetting to build the houses and invest in that sort of more blue collar, if you like, kind of trade base. The lack of trades is creating a lack of productivity in big infrastructure. God knows how the Brisbane Olympics is going to come together. I do worry for Queensland that there's going to be such a trade shortage. Like you think about,
you can always do a Dan, Sammy. You just cancel it.
You just cancel it.
Do a Dan, cancel it.
Just send it elsewhere. Like you think about every hotel in Brisbane's going to need to be renovated. If you're the Ritz-Carlton, you're not going to want your hotel looking shabby when the Olympics come around. If you're the Hilton, so you think about just everything's going to need tradespeople in certainly in southeast Queensland over the next 5-6 years to renovate that place. And no one knows where they're coming from. Plus, you've got to build some residential properties to house the population. It's mental.
And what happens with this, Sam, in the mining sector, they get away with it. They just go, because there's so much money, they just go, we will pay dumb money to get these people to do it. But it's not the same in this sector because we can't afford to do it. So they say no migration. The reality is we need specific migration, specific skilled areas in order to produce what we've already agreed to, and also basically to fund the growth. Migration is is key to economics.
Oh, it's
Absolutely key.
It's very, very much key. And I think I heard Jason talk about this last week on his show. You know, we're replacing ourselves. Basically, BlackRock and Cbus are going to be the landlords of tomorrow. Like that's basically what's happening.
Well,
And
we saw Dan next to dictators, so clearly that's been in play for quite some time.
so you can see on the figures here, this is build to sell plus build to rent. So build to sell is just basically there's no, it's sold to an investor, it's sold to an owner occupier, and build to rent (BTR) is the sort of peachy color there. I'm a bit colorblind, but that's no middleman. There's no investor. There's no owner occupier. That's the stuff Jason was talking about. It's got a 20, 30, 40-year lease. BlackRock's getting a great tax deduction.
This is really interesting, Sam, because this is the great magic trick of, look at one hand while the other hand robs you.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, what they're saying in one hand is property investors are bad. Property investors are bad, and they're driving up the cost of property. And on the other hand, they're saying, well, our mates at BlackRock and Cbus are good because they're going to build housing and then dictate how much it gets rented out for.
Yeah.
So instead of the public getting rewarded, Australians, your everyday Australians getting rewarded by taking risks, they're going, well, let's give a gift and a tax concession gift to institutions that don't even exist in Australia. And then ultimately they're going to become your landlord. So instead of Australian, like you or me, Sammy, being the landlord, you can deal with Cbus or BlackRock.
Yeah.
Try taking them to VCAT. Fuck.
Yeah, exactly. I put out a podcast about this actually this week. It's a scorched earth policy. You can't change the system, so you just burn the system down and bring in new people, new players, and just change society's belief around themselves. And I really think this is kind of a leading indicator around the eradication of wealth creation for the middle class in Australia. It's like, no, there's no such thing as property investment. It's you get your property through BlackRock. You buy the Cbus, you put your money in your pension fund with Cbus. That's the model that you can see it coming through the system. I mean, if you look all the way back here, you go back to 2021, 2020, there was no such thing as this. There was no such thing as build to rent. And now you can see, we can look over the horizon in 2028 that 80% of product coming into, this is the Brisbane apartment supply, 80% of product coming to Brisbane in 2028 is by BlackRock. It's by Cbus.
Get out of town. 80% of product in Brisbane.
This is apartment supply in Brisbane in 2028 is going to be provided by the government, pension funds, superannuation funds, and international corporations.
Well, clearly, property investors are fucking criminals. Then, Sam, they're criminals, aren't they? That's outrageous. That's literally,
yeah. It's destroying wealth creation in property. It's crazy. I mean, obviously, if you're invested, you're in the system, you'll do well. But yeah,
well, no, it's robbing Australians from the opportunity of taking risk to become wealthy.
That's right.
And this is the thing, and this is the tall poppy
syndrome. And this is the crazy thing. Dan Andrews is hanging out with the Chinese Communist Party, the North Korean Communist Party, and this has all been laid by the likes of him to socialize Australia. And you can see it in the data. You now have a system of socializing housing, taking it away from mum and dad property, like capitalists, to create wealth. You just get rid of it, burn it down. They're just burning it down.
That is a staggering statistic,
It's
Sam.
mad.
And for those of you who don't know, like Jason and I have been chatting about this since COVID days, and we agree, Amor, it's absolute madness and holy shit, look out. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, back when Andrews was actually in power during the period of COVID, they introduced a whole lot of concessions in regards to this build to rent. And I don't remember them. You might know them a little bit better,
Yeah,
better
it's
than me.
huge depreciation. There's no land tax.
You get more depreciation. You don't have to pay land tax. You get all of these concessions that everyday Australians get whacked with. We get whacked with land tax. We don't get the depreciation. So they incentivized offshore, specifically not Australian money, in the build to rent scheme. And so it was incentivizing people. So, and this, let me simplify it. Australians can take a risk and get a mortgage against their property and invest with developers in Australia and keep the money in Australia, and they can risk their money and we can build things, and pay our taxes, or we can cut all of the taxes, get money from offshore to come and build stuff, not pay any taxes or not pay anywhere near the taxes we would pay, and then own the real estate. Which universe would you want? Because clearly I'd be going, let's embrace property ownership in Australia. Let's embrace property investors in Australia. Let's allow Australians to take risk, Australians to become wealthy, and let's cut foreign ownership of Australian property. Let's cut the ability for them to become rich off our assets. Let's allow Australians to. It's insane. So it doesn't make sense.
It's insane. And yeah, like there's I guess a political context known as the sort of cloud pivot move, which is basically if you want to change something, you just overload it. You overload it to the point where it's going to burn down. Now we know Bill Shorten went to the electorate in 2019 about really property investment and share investment and franked dividends and negative gearing, and he got sent packing. And I really believe since then, what you're seeing now is, okay, because if we go back to 2019, build to rent wasn't a thing, right? The election was in 2009. You can't see any build to rent at that mode. Then it's like, okay, we can't beat the system. Let's burn the system down. Let's just give the perks to BlackRock, the biggest company in the world, and let's.
Well, they need the concessions, Sammy. They've got mouths to feed.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, they're doing it tough.
So when I get down to $1 trillion in my bank account, I start to shiver as well.
It's like they don't want, like, obviously Australia. Look, it'd be great if we were, we could all, I don't know, live in a utopia where everyone's worth the same and, we all look the same and everyone's happy or whatever. What they hate is people doing well for themselves. And on the other flip side of that, people not being able to keep up. So they're just destroying the system. But I mean, look, real estate's about scarcity, and what you can garner from this, if you can get into the market, you're just going to compete with less product because there's less product that's ever going to be sold, ever going to go to market. And so very interesting set of figures, that one. But yeah, I think Jason was kind of talking about it before.
Oh, well, mate, before we wind up, because maybe we'll put some good news on the table for everybody as we get into the last 5 minutes. But I was curious about what you were going to say to this image right here.
Bob. I tell you what, it's a bit, look, you can tell Australia now is, what's sad in Australia is people are starting to turn against each other. People are starting to, question what's going on. really, is that a fault of the people or is that a fault of government? You have to go, is the real estate market a fault of the marketplace or is it a fault of government? I mean, if you just left things alone, the market would take care of itself.
Yes.
Really, where we're at the moment, is a situation where, from a perspective of like how fast Australia is growing, can it keep up? Can it keep up? We're not keeping up at the moment, and it's one of those things. I think most Australians aren't anti-immigrants because we're all immigrants, but I think there's an underlying, conversation piece around like, if we can't build homes, like how do we keep up with the population increases? And this is a statistic. Basically, last sort of September to September, sort of half a million people, and it's just like, well, where do they get housed? What are we doing? And so it's kind of, this week has blown my mind. You got Dan Andrews with the Communist Party. You've got Bob Katter marching down the street with the Aussie flag. Like, you've got neo-Nazis in the middle of Sydney and Melbourne. You've got, like, it is fucking, society feels like it's breaking down. And in between the madness, it's like, geez, we've all got to make sense of all that, and try and look after our businesses, try and look after ourselves, try and look after our neighbours. It's been a chaotic week, that's for sure. More wine, yes, I think that's the answer.
Well, look, and there's parts of that. I mean, we poke a bit of fun at it, but Sam, like, you bang on. Like, there's media doesn't do well with it because media just promotes the clickbait headlines of all of the bad stuff that's going on. It very rarely looks at the truth, which is that the reality is, if we need to build more, which we do, because as an economy and as general wealth of the whole nation, right? Now, let's not just talk about property investors or anybody. In order for you, Joe, every single person in Australia to have a shot at being able to be wealthy or fund their own retirement, the country as a whole needs to be profitable and needs to expand. If you have a detracting society, that's bad for everybody. So the country needs to expand. We need population growth, right? That's a fact. The right type of immigration we need, because we need the right people to come in to do the right projects to produce the right results for Australia. Immigration as a whole is not bad. Bad immigration is bad. The right immigration is really good because it produces productivity that allows people to be housed, not just the immigrants, but more people to be housed in general, and allows, if we allow Australians to invest and have the same tax concessions as BlackRock and the biggest companies on the face of the planet, if Australians are allowed to invest in Australia with equal opportunity as the BlackRocks of the world, we have the right people coming into the country, then all of a sudden we've got a red hot dip. But all of this political friction that we see in Australia now is these headlines of immigration is bad, we're going to fix immigration. Property investors are bad, we're going to fix property investing. And all of these things which they push over to one side, but you've got to ask, well, who's building the houses? Who owns the houses? And, well, what if we were to do the same thing? And I think if you kind of look at it and you go, well, that doesn't paint a good picture for a number of reasons. But what's the opportunity in it, Sammy? When you sit back and you go, there's a lot of clusterfuck going on right now. Where do you see like the opportunities when you look at the world and you go, this is mad, this is a bit crazy? Like Dan Andrews is hanging out with some of the big dictators of the world. Like, do we buy wine because it's all about to get shipped off to China? Like
I just think you got to be contrarian to all of it. You just got to look at it and go, you know what, I'm going in harder and gonna, carve out a piece of this world for yourself. Like, turn down the noise. But I mean, there is so much noise put out there that, you can see why a lot of people end up not investing and live in a sort of state of fear. But I think my own viewpoint is the uninvested will end up in a place where they're socialized and they're going to be conditioned that way. And those invested will see it from a different angle. And there'll still be property investment out there. There'll still be share investment. There'll still be ways to make money and co-invest and help each other succeed. But honestly, you can see that, the menace is there. They're sort of putting jobs in the hands of BlackRock, who will use a builder, which is a union builder, to build the building, which costs 3 times as much as the other builder, and it's all just it's a bit of political master stroking. So all we can do is look after ourselves, stick together, and work on our own future. But there's gold out there. There's things out there. The FANG. Get into the FANG.
well, that's it, Sam. Because ultimately, and this is the whole reason that we started doing this in the beginning, was we saw the headlines were lies or untrue or were masking truth. We saw that there were very few facts around, and even bandied by politicians these days. And I'm not sure if you guys saw it, and maybe we'll talk about it next week. But ultimately, like, if you go back and you search House of Reps inquiry 1991 Kerry Packer, you'll see when the whole of the Australian politicians went to an Australian businessman in public and said, "We don't agree with what you have to say here," and he gave them a serving. Now, mostly the government has been reasonably transparent on their perspectives of laws. More recent, the Productivity Commission, right? Before they went into that Productivity Commission, everyone had to hand in their phones and their recording devices, because apparently public servants are allowed to talk about things that have to do with the public that the public are not allowed to hear, even though we pay their bills. And that, my friends, I get it if it's ASIO. I get it if it's related to the security of the nation or something to that effect. I totally get that. But if it's based on economic policy, well, we should hear what they have to say. That's my perspective. But ultimately, there's opportunities that comes from these things, and they're plain as day. There's economic factors that exist. Scarcity produces certain types of ramifications. And so, team, if you want to start to navigate that journey, we run a masterclass. I've got one more, I think, one or maybe two. I know that we just put one more in next week. I think it's on Thursday night. Might be, don't guarantee, but scan the QR code if you want to come on and listen as a business owner, as how you can better navigate the ways of structuring your business, your cash, your leverage, and making sure that you make the rules apply to you in a way that benefits you rather than the government or the ATO. Or maybe you're a sophisticated investor who wants to try and figure out how to navigate some of the things that Sam and I have been talking about tonight. If you want to come along, scan the QR code. Let's have a little bit of a riff session. We can talk about ways that you can do things better. Perhaps listen to the real things, the data that's out there. Data, I don't know how to say it the right way. But ultimately, like when Sam starts talking, I listen and I go, well, there's a huge amount of opportunity that sits in this. And yes, you might need to take some risk in order to be able to do it. But how do you minimize those risks and maximize the opportunity that you've got? Because ultimately, I think that one thing is for sure: if we rely on the government to dictate your wealth, then, well, I believe that there won't be a good pension for most people in another 10, 15, 20 years. So you've got to figure out a way of being able to keep more of what you make and do it in a way that that helps you maintain your lifestyle for your life, and maybe even leave some for the kids if they deserve it. So, team, that's it. Scan the QR code. Come and hang out. We'll shed some light on it. Sam, mate, thanks for hanging out tonight. I appreciate your insights, and I know you've got a lot more to say, but
no, I appreciate it, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Andy. And Jason will be back next week, so you'll have your regular commentator back. I may never be invited back, but thank you for the opportunity.
Mate, I love it. I love what you've got to say. I love the it's not even a contrarian view. It's just a perspective that I think everybody needs to hear. And if we were armed with facts, not thoughts, and armed with data, not opinions, then, the average Australian is more armed, is forewarned, and can actually do something about it. So, Sammy, no, it's been awesome.
I think that's an important point. It's the forewarning. You've got to see this stuff coming, and we're seeing it. So, what we can do about it, there's plenty we can do, but you've got to see it first.
Well, Sam Saggers, thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Great Friday night. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it, and look forward to catching up with you next week for another welcome back to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Oh, just forgot. So we're doing something interesting next week. It's going to be a little bit of a unique Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. We'll be doing it from an airport lounge somewhere, going to a place somewhere to talk about how we can do things better from an investment perspective, and potentially ways of really making sure that we honor the rule book of keeping more of what you make and making sure that your money grows in the best way possible, and figuring out every way that you can possibly do it. I can't say anymore. I don't want to give too much away, but we will be coming to you from an airport lounge. So tune in for next week. We'll be Jace back, but ladies and gentlemen, give Sammy Saggers a massive thank you as he says goodbye tonight. We'll have you back, Sammy. It's been awesome. Appreciate you, and appreciate you guys for spending the Friday night with us. Happy Friday. It's a good night from me.
It's a good night from me.
Good night.
Thanks for watching another episode of Wealth, Wine and Wisdom.
Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss a thing, folks.
We'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Debrief the week with Wealth, Wine and Wisdom.
Every Friday at 5 p.m. Victoria and New South Wales time. We know that Queensland, South Australia, WA have different time zones, as does Darwin, but we're sure that you can do the calculations depending on whether it's daylight savings or not.
You can also catch up on all the episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you check out the Positive Mentor podcast from our 6-star team at positivementor.com.au.